Directly or indirectly, the oceans are crucial for every single human being on this planet. They make up around 70% of the Earth's surface, and beneath the waves is where early life evolved, and where 80% of all creatures that live on our planet call home. I absolutely love the oceans, and just like how the famous saying goes that pictures describe more than 1,000 words, I truly appreciate ocean photographers that creatively and patiently capture intricate details of marine life and share it with us. Today, I've had the privilege to talk to Simon Lorenz, an underwater photographer who has over 2,500 dives under his belt, capturing stunning and meaningful photographs of life underwater. Today's podcast is all about the ocean, sharks, rays, and all the other fascinating creatures that Simon has seen. I personally learned a lot about sharks, rays, and their evolutionary history. And I also love the fact that how passionate Simon was during our discussion, and I'm sure that his passion will radiate to everyone who's listening. Enjoy this episode. Hey Simon, welcome to the podcast. I'm looking forward for this discussion, and I've seen you on social media, and the photos that you have clicked of the ocean is absolutely fantastic. You have seen so many fascinating creatures. But I would love to start this by asking you, what is your favorite subject to photograph inside the ocean?
I have a lot because I love the ocean and all aspects of it. My current favorite animal, or the one that I'm most excited about, is actually the sperm whale, which is the largest toothed animal in the world that we have. The other whales that are bigger, they don't have teeth anymore. And I've just had a great experience in Sri Lanka where I got closer than ever before. They're really big, 12 to 15 meters, and they were really relaxed, swimming past us. So we had some really great interaction, but they're not very easy to photograph. Actually, it would be much nicer if you could just drop the camera and just enjoy. So it's, from an artistic perspective, there's other animals that are maybe a bit nicer to photograph, like sharks. I really enjoy taking pictures of sharks. And my personal favorite animal of them all is the octopus, which is a very smart, very versatile, very, very unique animal that essentially can have so many different faces and shapes that gives you a lot of different options for photography, but also just for observation. So
yeah, I mean, our octopus is hard to find because they can camouflage so well, right?
Yes, of course. They're not as easy to find as other animals, that's for sure. But with time, you get a trained eye, and you can find them. So, like in Hong Kong, where I live, we have 8 to 9 different species of octopus that we can find. And with time, you sort of develop a sense where they might be or what they might look like. If you're in a new location where you haven't been before, it's harder for sure. Yeah. But when you're lucky, you can find an octopus going about his daily business, and sometimes they're relaxed and they'll let you photograph them.
Yeah, that's very cool. And you mentioned sharks, and sharks are a keystone species in the marine ecosystems because their absence can really disrupt the entire balance because they are the apex predator. And, there are a lot of threats that sharks are facing these days, like things like the fin trade or bycatch or prey loss due to overfishing and things like that. So during your adventures or during your travels, have you noticed any decline in shark populations or anything like any conservation efforts that are being done towards protecting their populations?
Well, look, sharks have always been fished in history. I'm here in Spain. The other day I was in a restaurant and there was a picture of some fishermen from 100 years ago, and there was a blue shark on, holding a blue shark. And just a week before, I saw a similar picture in the Channel Islands in Guernsey, and they had hammerheads over their shoulders. So they've always been fishing sharks because sharks are relatively easy to fish. Just put something on a hook and eventually you'll get a shark. But the actual problem that we have only came with the emergence of the Chinese wealth, because before it was only Taiwan and Hong Kong and some small populations that were eating the sharks for their fin, and it was not a big problem. Now, China became a middle class that was huge, and everybody wanted to have the shark fins at their wedding and at their whatever big functions. And so from 2003 to 2008 is when we had the biggest decline in sharks. And I moved to Asia in 2008, so I already saw it as it was in the reduced way. But I know there are places that I dive where we have protection for 20 years, and you see sharks everywhere, like Palau or Yap. These are places in Micronesia which have had the first shark sanctuaries in the world. And when you dive there on a reef, any reef, doesn't matter where you jump in the water, you will see 30, 40 sharks, because you're swimming along and they're swimming along, and that's just the normal picture of a reef. It doesn't matter if you go shallow, then you will see the baby sharks, or if you go deeper, then you see the grown-up sharks, or if you go even deeper, then you will see different species of shark that live deeper. But you will not do one single dive in Yap or in Palau and not see a shark. And then you go to places like the Philippines and Indonesia, which were key target areas for the Chinese fin trade, right? And there's absolutely no sharks. In the Philippines, which used to be one of the densest shark populations in the world, you don't see any sharks at all, zero, you know? And Indonesia is the same. So that's kind of the situation that I encountered when I came here 2008, 2010. And then they were starting to realize that this is a problem, and they started protecting. So for example, in Indonesia, they now have areas which are no-take, like Komodo National Park, Raja Ampat, the area around Mizul. There's quite a few now. And you can see the difference. When I was the first time in Raja Ampat like 10 years ago, I didn't see any sharks. Okay, wobbegong sharks, a specific bottom-dwelling shark that they don't fish. But you didn't see any reef shark, no white tips, no black tips, nothing. And now, when you go back, I go back almost every year, you do see more of them. Not like Palau, but you see more. So they do come back now that they are protected in certain areas. But the overfishing is still dramatic. We have ocean-going sharks, like blue sharks, that are 95% fished down, you know. It's quite dramatic. Fortunately, China is starting to get a little bit better with the awareness, but it's slow. And unfortunately, in the meantime, because there's been so much fishing of the sharks, whole industries have developed around the size, the byproduct. So, you know, they would pull out the shark, cut off the fin. Okay, here's a big value, but then they had the whole body. So they started developing ways to make use of the rest of the shark. So now there's a huge industry for using shark meat, and also using squalene, which is like a byproduct from sharks that they use in cosmetics. And even if we would take the whole finning problem away, we would still have a whole system that needs these shark bodies. Yeah? So it's problematic for sure. But I am hopeful that at least if the finning stops, then, you know, the major threat to the sharks will end.
Yeah, hopefully. And we will come back to sharks because they're very interesting creatures. But I want to ask you more about, how does it feel like to dive? What is the energy in the water when you actually are diving and seeing all this beautiful fish and coral reefs and things like that? How is it different from, you know, seeing biodiversity on land or in a safari? Because in a safari, you're limited to a small jeep and you have to follow the path. And then the animals usually are hiding somewhere. They run away usually. But then when you're actually inside the water, it's three-dimensional. You can move wherever you want to. And you can see, oh, you can go look at this coral reef, or you can go and look at that moray eel or anything like that. And the animals or the fish are more approachable as well compared to terrestrial animals. So how is the whole experience like diving in the ocean to see biodiversity?
Well, you've described it very well. I wonder if you've already been scuba diving yourself, because
I've never, but I would love to.
You described it very well. The difference to above water is that nature is much more approachable underwater, because due to the water reducing the speed of things, actually it's quite normal for predator and prey to swim side by side. So you'll have the shark swimming along, and he will swim right through a school of fish, and they will go a little bit out of the way, but they will not run away, because the shark will not actually have a chance to strike at them in that situation. The shark mostly will only hunt them at night. And at night, they will hide inside the reef, and it's a different story. So generally, fish, and not only fish, all marine animals are much more used to the presence of something larger being very close. So you've got that, which is an amazing thing, that you can just get much closer to animals. The other thing is that when you are in a diverse area, like if you would be going diving in the Baltic Sea where you live, that's a different story. There's not that interesting things to see. I mean, I would dive there just as much, but it's there you have bigger animals that hide inside rocks, etc. But if you go diving in Indonesia, it's so much color you cannot imagine. There's 1,000 species of coral that you can find in Raja Ampat alone, and 1,500 species of fish. It's the diversity at these hotspots that's mind-blowing. And on top of that, you have an insane experience of being suspended in zero gravity. You know, we're floating. Like you say, there's a reef there or down there, you can go there, you know, and you can glide there, you can fly there. It's a feeling of flying like a helicopter. You can go forwards, backwards, to the sides, etc. You're fully lightweight. And finally, one thing that I really love about it is we normally are just surrounded by air. Only our feet or maybe our butt touches something, but normally we're surrounded by air. And this is the only time we are fully suspended in materia, right? In water. It's a really bizarre thing to not be surrounded by oxygen, but by just water. Yeah, it's just a bizarre feeling. So it's thrilling and it's calming. And I have to say, now I've done like 2,500 dives already. I still am never thinking about the upside world. You know, when I'm down there, I'm in the moment. When you're, during the day, you always have your phone, and you're never single-minded. People meditate, or we do sports trying to like really get our head to be single-minded. Whereas once you drop in the water, you're just in the moment. So it's for me and for most of the people that I know, the amazing thing about scuba diving is you go for an hour, or you go 4 times a day for an hour, and you're just not thinking about the world. So yeah,
that's crazy. It must be very therapeutic, like you mentioned. And have you managed to film animals and wildlife on terrestrial environments?
Yeah, sure. I've done lots of safaris and things like that, but it's not quite the same because, if you compare seeing a shark or seeing a jaguar, a jaguar, you have to sit in your Jeep, you have to be in your protective shell, because the wildcat could get you and could be difficult. Whereas with a shark, I can go face to face, except for 3 sharks. Actually, only 2 sharks that we have to be careful with. And even those we can actually dive with. All other sharks are completely harmless to us. And some of them are huge, and they're just not dangerous for us because we don't fit into their hunting patterns. So the only shark that you have to be careful with is the great white and the tiger. All the other ones are fine. Even the bull shark is, except for certain situations, bull shark's not dangerous either.
Yeah. And that was just going to be my next thing. But what are some of the skill sets that, makes a good ocean photographer?
Well, there's mainly there's 3 elements that I would say that are crucial. Okay. One is, first of all, you need to be a good scuba diver. I often see people that start with underwater photography before they actually are good at diving. One thing that we said earlier is like, oh, you can float to the right, you can float to that. That's not what you can do immediately. When you go for your first time, you're just all over the place, right? Because it's a new way of being. It's like learning to walk again, and then learning to walk gracefully. So the first thing is you need to be a good scuba diver. The second thing is you need to technically understand your camera. And it's quite difficult because underwater, we're not seeing our camera like you see your device outside of the water. It's in a metal box and it has, buttons and levers and whatever. And then we need artificial light because it's dark down there. So we normally have 2 strobe lights and a video light. So we've got quite a lot of things going on, and they're not point and shoot. It's not like you take a picture and it looks good. You have to do quite a lot of things. So in order to be a good photographer, you need to be able to manage your equipment, and that takes practice. You have to do many dives with the camera before you technically can do it. And then there's the third element, and that's the part that some people never learn. That's actually paying attention to the animal and what they're doing. So I often find that because I have the knowledge of what these animals are doing, I can get a much better photograph. Because if an animal, say the octopus that we mentioned earlier, is feeding, the different kinds of octopus have different ways of feeding. So if you know how they feed, instead of going right into their face and taking a photo, I can go where I feel like they will be coming to and wait there until the animal comes my way. Because mostly an octopus is moving along a reef, foraging, looking in different crevices, etc. So if you chase him, he will stop feeding. You won't get that image. But if you stay in an area where the animal is working its way towards to, then you have a much bigger chance of getting the shot. Same with sharks. Sharks are afraid of us, even the big ones. So if you swim right at them, they're going to swim away. So I always swim where I feel like they're going to be swimming, and then I get the nice shot. So these are the 3 elements: is you need to be a good scuba diver, you need to be a good underwater photographer, but really you need to understand your animal,
Yeah, very, very good points. And, my favorite fish is the whale shark, which is the largest fish in the world. And I also love the manta ray, which is the largest ray species. And I've never seen one in real life, only in documentaries. I would love to see them in real life. But how is it working with manta rays now? Because have you seen them, the feeding frenzy which they go through, where they move like, it almost looks like an underwater cyclone. So have you experienced that?
I've seen small ones. The ones that you see on TV are, of course, special situations that happen. I've been meaning to go to Hanifaru, where you have, hundreds of them. I'm going to go this September, actually, finally. It's been rescheduled 3 times due to COVID, but I've seen it in other places like Palau and also in the Maldives. So there are places where you can witness this, and it's interesting because when you go to a place where manta rays are feeding, you can go right in there, and they will never bump into you because they can sense when you're ahead of them. There's this dive that we do in Ari Atoll in the Maldives. It's a night dive with manta rays. And what we do is we hold a light on the bottom of the sand, and there's so much krill coming out of the sand, so you will have clouds of krill above your light. And the manta rays will come in and they dive right into those clouds. So we make a ring of the lights, and the manta rays are coming, and they're coming from all sides. And once I did like this experiment, I just stood up. Like I was just standing on the sandy bottom, and the manta ray would be right in front of me. And they're 3 meters across, and just before me, he would barrel flip because he can sense I'm there. They don't really like bumping into you or into each other. So when they do the vortex feeding, what they're doing is they're avoiding each other. It's the same like a school of fish, If you swim like this in circles, then you don't bump into each other. And so when there's so many, then they will do the whirlwind feeding or the vortex feeding just to avoid bumping into each other, because they can sense where something is. Yeah? Even though their eyes are on the side, they can sense forward.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And they're truly the gentle giants of the ocean. And
you're a marine you want to be a marine biologist, right? So right? That's what you're looking at.
Yeah. So yeah, marine or nature conservationist in general.
Nature conservation. Let me see if there's one thing that I can ask you if you know it or not. Did you know that manta rays have teeth?
Oh, really? I did not know about this.
And whale sharks also have teeth.
Oh, they feed on plankton, but still they have teeth?
They still have teeth, right? So why is that? The reason is because manta rays and whale sharks are an evolution of their respective animals. So the whale shark is actually a carpet shark, like a nurse shark, right? So actually a bottom shark that has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually they just need to feed on the smallest things to retain this kind of size. So they don't need the teeth anymore because they're just filter feeding, same like the manta ray, right? But sharks mate in a very specific way, which is when the males hold on to the females. And the reason why manta rays and whale sharks still have small, but they still have teeth, is because they still grab the female with their mouth and their teeth when they're having, when they're mating. And so that's why if you look into, if you now that you know, when you look into a picture, of a big manta ray or a whale shark opening their mouth to feed, check the bottom. On both species still have teeth at the bottom.
Cool. I will surely do that. And thank you so much for sharing this. I did not know about this. And speaking of evolution, right? I would love to know, I love manta rays because they look so unique. They're almost like aliens from another planet, right? So is there an evolutionary reason as to why they look the way they do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So all rays are essentially a derivative or a evolutionary development from sharks. So if you look at skates, or if you look at shovel-nose rays, you can see that they look like sharks that have the pectoral fins are fused to the face and are stretched out more. So these are shark-like animals that are feeding close to the bottom. They're optimized to feed on the bottom, right? And they get flatter and flatter and flatter. So if you look at a shovel-nose ray, for example, or a guitar shark, these are animals where the back looks like a shark and the front looks like a ray, right? And that already proves kind of that the ray is a development from the shark. So then these animals develop flatter and flatter and flatter until they're really just like a pancake, and the tail becomes shorter and shorter and shorter until it's only the spine that's left. And then for protection, they eventually develop the sting, and this is why many of the rays have a sting, or at least the stingray species have a sting. So now you've got various species of these pancakes, yeah? And like always in nature experiments. Okay, let's see if we make some smaller ones. How will they do? Oh, works. Okay, we're gonna make a new species. And now let's make them bigger and let's see how they do. And okay, how does this work? So when you have bigger ones, eventually they don't find that much food at the bottom anymore, right? Or rather, what happened was the stingray, is like a pancake, right? And feeds from the bottom. But we have a lot of krill coming out of the sand. So another type of ray would open its mouth to the front and scoop up all the krills above the ground. And that is basically the beginning of a small manta ray, which we call mobula rays. Mobula rays are actually the mother species for manta rays. So manta ray is a large mobula, not the other way around. So what we would have had is a stingray is eating on the sand, and then another stingray is eating more what's coming out of the sand, filtering, and then this guy is like just swimming over the sand, filtering all the krill until they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually they start feeding on krill that's maybe also at the surface or in the middle of the water column, right? And that's how the stingray developed into a manta ray. This is a very crude description that I gave you, but essentially that's how the evolutionary connection is. So the whale shark is a development from a nurse shark type animal, which is a bottom feeder, same like the stingray. and it developed to become a filter feeder in the open ocean. And same, the stingray is a bottom feeder and developed to a manta ray to be an ocean-going ray, right? But essentially, it's the same process. Nature comes up with the same solutions why, you know, dolphins have teeth and whales have filters. It's the same thing. Once you get to a certain size, the only way to sustain yourself is if you feed on krill. And that's how we get to the size. By the way, the manta ray still has the hump of where the sting used to be. So on the oceanic manta ray, you can still see a little hump that has no function, but that's essentially where the sting used to be. So that's why we know they're related to the stingrays.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Wow. And thank you so much for this explanation. And I would love for you if you could highlight a bit more. How do you like actually classify? Because sharks and rays both are part of the elasmo branch, right? So how do you differentiate between a shark and a ray? Because I often get confused because there are some species that look very similar, like the bullmouth guitarfish, for instance. It looks both like a shark and a ray. So how do you go about differentiating them?
So what do you know what it is? Is it a ray or a shark?
It's a ray, right?
It's a ray, exactly.
Yeah.
So the essentially it's where the gills are. When the gills are on the outside, then it's a shark, and when the gills are on the underside, then it's a ray. But I think it's a very fluent differentiation, because I feel like the intermediate species, so the guitarfish, they should be their own thing, because some of them have the gills on the side and some of them have them below, because they're the margin species. They're the species where the two elasmobranch families are diverging, and they're right there in the middle, and it's not quite clear which one is which. But this is how we make the difference. So if you've got like a bottom-dwelling shark, like a nurse shark, the gills are still here, right? And if you have the guitar shark, the gills are below, and so then it's
yeah. And what, like, you have done countless dives, and have you had any encounters, any unexpected encounters, or any scary encounters with fish or your equipment or anything that went wrong?
Well, look, I mean, I've had many weird encounters, but scuba diving is generally not that dangerous. So the most dangerous situations is usually with diver error, when people make mistakes or they are not ready for a certain experience and they panic. Because some people, they think that they're pretty good, but then they're at 30 meters depth and, something happens and they just lose their marbles, and those are the most dangerous situations that I've had, where people just suddenly freak and, you have to hold them down and the eyes are like this and they're just not there and you have to get them to be back, or people running out of air. Those are the situations. But I've never had any injuries on any of my 2,500 dives with anybody around me, not even decompression sickness that many people get. It's not inherently a dangerous thing. With animals, there's actually very few animals that are dangerous, right? It's a tiger shark and the great white shark, and that's it. Nothing else is dangerous, actually. Of course, there's sea urchins and people put their hand in it, but they shouldn't have put their hand in it, and they're not going to die from it. So the most awkward situation that I've had was on a tiger shark dive in Fiji, where it was quite a lot going on. They have like a big bucket with fish that normally a guy with chainmail will go and open up and give the bull sharks and the tiger sharks something to eat. But it was just very hectic. There were like 30 bull sharks there and a very itsy tiger shark lady, very big one also. And the guys in the chainmail didn't feel comfortable going to the box. And the tiger shark got quite aggressive. So she was coming at every individual diver. I got some fantastic photos, but I had my camera, so if really if the shark comes too close, I always have my camera that I can protect myself. But there were some people there that didn't have a camera, and the shark still went for each individual person from the front, from the back, kept coming. and it bit one of the cameras. So it actually bit down on one of the cameras. So it was just it was too busy and too hectic, that situation. So we aborted the dive, and that's it. Nothing happened further. But situations like that could go wrong. We've had some few situations where people have been bitten by tigers or bulls. We've had a couple of bites by oceanic whitetips in the Red Sea, to the degree that the Brothers Islands were closed for a couple of months until they figured out what happened, and they realized that the boats were, deliberately or not, letting kitchen refuse out. So the sharks were quite like, there's food in the water, then they get much more aggressive, and people were being careless. And so, we had one guy almost lose his life because he was bitten in the calf, and like a proper chunk of the calf muscle was torn out, which is where there's a big artery as well. So he was losing a lot of blood. So things like that do happen. We had a tiger shark in Cocos Island, which is a famous place to go shark diving. And you see tiger sharks, tons of tiger sharks, hammerheads. You see so many sharks. It's an amazing place. But one day there was a big female tiger shark that decided to attack a human, and she killed the human. And then that tiger shark became a problem shark that would approach, didn't hurt any other humans, but it would always approach very aggressively. And so whenever Gordita would come around, they had like these poles with like sort of dynamite tipped poles that they could punch the shark in the worst case scenario. So those are like sort of situations which have like a little bit of potential. But if you know how to dive with a shark, and I talk about it extensively on my trips, we do training how to dive with sharks, it's really not dangerous. And we have over 500 species of sharks, and 3 are dangerous, or 4 maximum, and even those are, I've dived with tiger sharks a lot. They don't have to be dangerous. It's just certain situations can be a bit iffy.
Just like you say, 2 or 3 species out of so many are dangerous. And I think people have this perception that sharks are, very dangerous creatures because of all these movies that they end up seeing to get, a false impression. But I would love to ask you that, your career is so fantastic. You get to visit so many beautiful places. You get to dive in, and observe so much of biodiversity around you. But what are some of the downsides, or what are some of the not so good things about ocean photography as a profession that one should consider before taking this unconventional path?
Well, what I mentioned, this was before we started recording, but in any job like this, not only this, also if you choose to become a mountain hiking guide, or a trick cycling specialist, or whatever, essentially what you do is you diverge from the path of regular income, and you have to find multiple sources of income, as well as accept that part of your income is paid in passion dollars. So I always call it passion dollars because we love to receive passion dollars, but no bank will give us money in exchange. So I used to earn much more money in my previous career, but I'm happier as I am now because I make enough to have a good living, and the rest I get paid with constantly doing something that excites me and that motivates me, and actually excites and motivates other people. That's one thing I like the most. We're just talking about sharks. I just did a trip to the Reviajero, Socorro Islands in Mexico, which is one of the best places for sharks. And we do this crazy thing where we snorkel at night with silky sharks, and they're like 30, 40, or 50 silky sharks circling the boat at night, pitch black water, and the people are standing there going like, I don't think I'm going to be going in there, And then, I go in, and then the more, brave people go in first. And in the end, everybody went in and swam with these sharks, because these sharks are not dangerous. They're still as big as we are almost, 2 meters, easy, but they're not aggressive. And you can tell that. You can just see. And And that's one of the things that I love actually, giving to people, is seeing that once you come face to face with a shark, for example, it's thrilling, but it's not. You don't think of danger really, and so there you are. You get your passion session as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're very correct about this. It must be very rewarding to see such beautiful things happening in the oceans, because when we're on a boat, let's say, the ocean just seems just a body of water with nothing going on. But as soon as you dive inside, you realize that there's a whole world underneath that we aren't aware of. But I would like to end this podcast by asking you a very important question that I ask each and every one of my guests, that what is your favorite moment so far, or a highlight of your career? Maybe a particular place that you love to dive in, or a particular incident, something you think is worthwhile to share.
Well, I would say pointing out one single one would be very difficult, but I literally just a few weeks ago had my best ever interaction with sperm whales. We were like 30 miles off the coast of Sri Lanka, and we've been looking for whales for many days. And we knew that there was a group of whales, but we couldn't find them, and we were searching and searching. And finally, the other boat, we were 2 boats searching, found them, and we got there, and they were just, at the surface, and you could see they were not swimming away. You could tell that they were stationary, So we got in the water quietly and approached them, and you could see these giant whales just really gently sort of snuggling with each other. They're kind of rubbing the bodies together, and they're just sort of rolling against each other. And they're huge, 12 meters, 14 meters, 16 meters, huge animals, but they're very gentle. And then they sense our presence, and they make these tick, 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 tick sounds, where they kind of do an echolocation, and they scan how big you are. And then they sort of just slowly start swimming away, and we just get back on the boat and jump back in. And it was just an amazing experience, because I'd never been in a situation with sperm whales where they were stationary. They were not swimming away. So that was definitely one of my highlights, but I've got many more highlights that I could share. But at the moment, I'm totally pumped up on my sperm whale experience.
Yeah, that's great. And what is next on your wish list? Which creature do you want to see or film next?
I'm working hard to see orca. Orcas are, you have to be lucky to encounter orcas. In the past, I actually realized I was a bit scared of orcas. There was a situation where we thought there was an orca very close to the boat, and normally when I see something, my first instance is, let's jump in. And somebody is like, oh, orca. And I was like, ooh, am I going to jump in? Because that's actually a big animal. Because I hadn't really done that much research on orca. I didn't really know. I just knew that they were huge, and that they kill big animals, and so that's all I knew. So it ended up not being an orca. It was a pilot whale, but and we didn't go in because it was gone before we got ready. But ever since, I've been really looking much into orcas, and I do lots of whale trips these days. So orcas are always part of the conversation. And it turns out orcas have never hurt humans before, except in captivity. In captivity is a different story, but in nature, and there's lots and lots of videos where huge 8-meter orcas are swimming right next to people in the water and don't even do a nibble, nothing. They just assess and seem to not be interested in anything further. And so now I wouldn't be afraid of jumping in anymore. Now I just have to find them. So I've done a few trips where we were looking for them, but we haven't found them yet. So this summer this fall I'm going to Norway, which is one of the best places in the world to see orca. And we will hopefully find orcas hunting for herring in the northern fjords of Norway.
Wow, that sounds very amazing. So, well, good luck with that. And hopefully you get to see some amazing orcas and take some beautiful pictures. I'm looking forward to that as well. And, I would like for you to end this by letting the people know where can they, join you on dives, and where can they learn from you, or where can they get in touch with you and your work?
So I run a travel company called Insider Divers. Maybe you can put it in the link or somewhere.
I will.
Insider Divers is an aquatic travel company. So we take people on trips that are always led by somebody like myself. I would say I do about 70% of all trips, and then I've got some guys that are specialists that run other trips, which means you're going to go scuba diving with us or snorkeling with whales, for example, with us, but you're always going to do it in a group, and you're always going to do it with a group leader. So you're going to learn a lot about the animals that we encounter. So if we do something with sharks, I will have like a shark workshop, or if we're seeing manta rays, we'll show lots of videos about the different behaviors of manta rays. And if it's whales, we'll discuss all the different things that are relevant to whales as well as conservation. So you learn a lot when you come on a trip with us. So yeah, please, if you're interested in scuba diving or free diving with animals, look for Insider Divers, and then we'll dive together.
Absolutely. And well, thank you so much, Simon, for doing this. I really appreciate the time that you took to make this happen. And you have a lot of knowledge about, rays and sharks. And thank you so much for sharing it with me, because I learned a lot of new things today. And the work that you're doing is very important, because many people don't know what actually goes on in the ocean, and your photographs and everything that you do is acting as a medium to convey the things that are happening inside the ocean to us. And that's going to make us ultimately realize how important and how beautiful the ocean is, and that's what is going to drive us to protect this beautiful habitat and ecosystem. So thank you so much for this.
You're welcome, and thanks for inviting me. I think it's an amazing thing that you're organizing with this YouTube channel, and I hope you get lots of viewers that learn from your very good narration. You're well researched, and you're doing a really great job. So keep doing it, and looking forward to seeing more of your work.
Thank you so much.